Support comes from St. Louis Public Library Foundation, helping the library serve children and their families with programs and services needed to become lifelong readers. More information about the foundation is at slpl.org.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio.
I'm Emily Woodbury, in for Elaine Cha. Today, I'd like to take you to one of my favorite spots in town, a cozy watering hole in Tower Grove East called Riley's Pub. On Wednesday nights, it feels like you're stepping into a pub in Ireland. That feeling's no happenstance. It's the result of several decades of culture and talent building by St. Louisans with a passion for Irish music. On a recent Wednesday, a dozen or so musicians tuck into the front table. They pull out fiddles, flutes, tin whistles, drums, guitar, banjo. There's a concertina, a box-shaped instrument similar to an accordion, and uilleann pipes. These aren't the well-known Highland bagpipes native to Scotland. Irish pipes have a softer, quieter tone and can be played inside. The musicians perform sets of jigs, reels, songs, and polkas as patrons hang out at the bar and in booths. The audience isn't encouraged to be quiet. There's no stage, and there's no set list. This is an Irish session, where musicians come and go, play the tunes they know, learn new ones, and exchange stories and techniques with one another between sets. This is one of many regular sessions in St. Louis. In fact, the region's become known for its Irish music scene.
You know, it just keeps getting better. We started out at Riley's with just like 5 or 6 people, mostly people that weren't professional musicians. They were just people that worked and this was a hobby. But since then, the people at Riley's, these are a much more higher caliber musician. Nothing against all the people that are just like me, just trying to do the best they can, but there's some really great musicians in St. Louis.
That's fiddle player Larry Pontius of St. Louis. I first met him at Riley's, and I've learned a lot from him this past year. I played classical violin as a kid, but as many former musicians may be familiar with, in adulthood, my instrument sat sadly in the closet, collecting dust. I always enjoyed Irish music, but it didn't strike me as something that I could do. That is, until I met several musicians who play Irish music in town who encouraged me to pursue it. Since then, I've reconnected with my violin, or as I say now, my fiddle, in new, unexpected ways. I even led a set of jigs at a recent session. I'm more relaxed playing Irish tunes than I was performing Vivaldi and Mozart. I tap my feet to the rhythm as I play. I have fun with it. And I've found community. Apparently, that's not just a side benefit of playing Irish music. It's a feature, as the musicians at Riley's will tell you.
I've met some great friends through this music, some wonderful people. And I don't think life would be the same if I hadn't gone down that path.
I love that you can sit down at a session, not only here, but like anywhere in the world, and play a somewhat common repertoire of tunes that people know and just meet new people. Everyone's always really welcoming. I've always just had a really good community experience playing Irish music. I think that's what keeps me coming back.
I think it's very clear that the music is something that's beyond just you. I mean, I love music, and the idea of being able to make it myself was wonderful when I started playing, but really this is social music, and so that feeling you get playing with others just makes you understand that it's not just about you. It's about tradition, it's about community, and it's really beautiful.
One thing I find about this style of playing, this style of learning music, is that it's completely organic and it's like very alive. The vibe can change so much depending on the musicians that you have around you and what they bring to the session and to the vibe, if you will. Yeah, it's a living tradition.
And the other thing that's great about Irish music this way is that it's something that people do across the generations. I can't think of many places in society that are left at this point where we know people and we do the same activity together. With people who are much older than us and people who are much younger than us. So this idea of being part of a tradition, I think partially it's about connection across generations as well.
That's Lisa Gilbert, John Boldwin, Katie Bean, Tim Yao, and Larry Pontius, musicians from across the St. Louis region who played at a recent Wednesday night Irish session at Riley's Pub. St. Louis didn't always have such a robust Irish music scene. It wasn't until the 1970s that Irish folk became commonly taught and played in town. That was when St. Louis Irish Arts was founded by Patrick and Helen Gannon, and when John D. McGurk's Irish Pub and Garden was established as a place for traveling musicians. Then, in 1998, uilleann piper Mike Mullins co-founded the St. Louis Tionól. The annual 4-day festival brings musicians of all levels together to play music and to learn from each other in workshops, performances, and sessions. The Irish word Tionól means a gathering with the intent to share. Larry looks forward to it every year.
The Tionól feels to me like a big family reunion. I've met people from all over the country. Some people come in from California, a lot from Michigan and Iowa. And just like a family reunion, you see them every year. If there's kids, they get bigger. If they're, grown-ups, they get a little older or grayer. But it's all about the tunes. It's like having a family reunion, but everyone likes to do the same thing. You combine that with being around like the best in the business for Irish traditional music, people from Ireland coming in that are personable, you can talk to, you can take a lesson with them, you can play a tune with them after hours. It's just a great experience. The whole weekend goes by way too fast.
This year's Tionól begins on Thursday, and people are traveling to St. Louis from all over the country for it. Evan Michaelides is coming in from Houston.
Honestly, St. Louis punches way above its weight in Irish music. I got to say, Houston is probably, 2 or 3 times the size of St. Louis, but you've got a much bigger and broader and deeper Irish music scene there. I was just almost taken aback and amazed when I came to appreciate what's going on there. And that's, hats off to people like Mike who have built the institutions to keep it going. You're very fortunate.
Tim Norris, who lives just outside of Kansas City, has attended the Tionól since 2007 to hone his Irish flute, penny whistle, and uilleann pipe skills.
I drive across I-70 to get to it, so it's easier than flying to Ireland.
He says his favorite thing about it is being able to learn from the very best in Irish music.
I've met some of my heroes. I've met Mick O'Brien stands out as a fantastic player, and yet because of the Irish traditional culture, he's more than willing to sit down with people who can barely play and teach them what he can. And I think it's that sense of the sharing. You wouldn't get to sit down with Eric Clapton or Bruce Springsteen and learn how to play guitar, but you would learn with these people, and they are on a world-class level.
The artist Tim mentions, Mick O'Brien, is a regular St. Louis Tionól performer and workshop teacher. Mick is a renowned uilleann piper from Dublin. Here he is playing Woman of the House, an Irish reel off his 2003 album, Kitty Lie Over. The St. Louis Tionól isn't Mick's only St. Louis connection. His brother, fiddler Andrew O'Brien, has lived in St. Louis since 1990. I had the opportunity to speak with Mick and Andrew last month, and as we explore St. Louis's growing Irish music scene on today's show, I'd like to share part of our conversation. Andrew, you moved to St. Louis from Ireland. Right now we're talking with Mick. He's overseas in Ireland. What made you come to St. Louis?
Wow. I came here and I was first over in 1986 when summer in college I came to Chicago and down to St. Louis and played at McGurk's for a bit of fun and got to see it. And then in 1990 I had this opportunity to come over with a green card. So I just finished college and I was 24 and I thought, good way to see the States. I could do whatever I want. I had to find a place to arrive to, and I had a friend in St. Louis. I knew McGurk's, and so this was the place I arrived with not really the intention of staying, but here I am.
Wow, so McGurk's, a pub in Soulard, was part of your reason for choosing St. Louis as your home.
It was just, I knew I'd arrive and I'd be looking for something to do, and a great way is to maybe get a little bit of work playing music. It wasn't guaranteed, but also a place I could meet some people, and then the person on the ground, I thought, if you have two, 1 and 1 might equal 2, might equal 4, you can grow it. So I knew, I'll at least have a place to go and start. And that was it. And I ended up getting a job in McGurk's from one of the owners, Jim Holleran, who I think we should acknowledge. Jim just passed away a few weeks ago. His funeral was last week, and he opened McGurk's in 1977 with a man, Nick Carter, and then Jim took it over in 1993, and it's still in his family since. And one of the greatest influences on the growth and the appreciation of Irish traditional music in St. Louis has been McGurk's over the years. And it's a part of the Tionól ever since its beginning too. So thank you, Jim.
Mick, how about you? What's your impression of McGurk's, but also more broadly about the St. Louis Irish music scene?
Well, I think Andrew was very lucky to land in St. Louis because for a long time they had fantastic musicians, traditional musicians playing music 7 nights a week in McGurk's, like the likes of Noel Hill, Joe Burke, Frankie Gavin, all of those people, they played in McGurk's. So it was a hub of music, really. So I remember being there during those times, and you couldn't ask for better. So that was he landed on his feet, to be honest. Yeah. And again, thanks to Mike Mullins and all the people who'd gone over there and helped the music.
But it was at a different place. Like New York had always a big flow of Irish immigration, which brought new musicians. Chicago in the 50s, 60s, a lot. That flow to St. Louis of Irish immigrants who would have brought music was not the same. It was very much late 1800s, early 1900s, and then a dribble since. So things like McGurk's and Helen, like St. Louis Irish Hearts, they kind of took an Irish culture that might be there. At least there's appreciation, people in St. Louis looking for it, and they brought it to St. Louis and were very successful in keeping it alive. And now I think, as you've seen, people's interest in music is more, people look for things, look for connections, and thankfully St. Louis has kept a pretty healthy ecosystem. So if you want access to Irish music and Irish culture, now with sports is there and other things, you can find it.
Keeping it alive, keeping the tradition alive, traditional Irish music, folk music, it is experiencing a revival today, and it's among multiple generations. There are very young people participating in the Tionól. I mean, children participate up to, someone who's in their very later stages of life can participate as well. It's a huge diversity of age in there. Why do you think that is? What is keeping this kind of older tradition, and people today are very interested in it?
Well, I think Irish music, and one of the reasons I think we're with it, is you share with cross-generational. Like, learning from an older person is not, that's not cool. Actually, that is cool. And there's a space, and I think, from playing yourself, where when you're playing the music, it's not all about the level at which you're playing, it's the fact that you're playing it and sharing it. So it's where sport can kind of inhibit you because of capacity, because of your body and physical nature, Folk music, traditional music, Irish music is very forgiving, so it's not all about technique. It's about playing the music and the tradition. So there's a great scope for sharing across the generations. And then when you're in somebody's company, as much of the great part of it is the fun you have. You get to know them. They call it in Ireland the crack, having a good time. So that is really, I think, one of the secret sauces to Irish traditional music, and probably any folk music, but it's very strong in Irish music. Mick?
Yeah, I agree with that. So as you say, Andrew, take folk music across Europe, go to Brittany, it's the same thing. It's like handed on generation from generation to generation. And it's like, regardless of whether you're young or old, and generally you're learning from the older people because they have brought the tradition with them. And they have unique voices. In whether they played fiddle or whether they sing or whether they dance or whatever. And that's what that's what we love, of course. So that's what you're trying to emulate.
But I think one other thing, Irish music, and I think a lot of traditions are doing it, but the Irish traditional music is continually evolving. And I think it's quite, I don't know why it is, but it's one of the traditions that is not stagnated in time. And it embraces new concepts. So like over the years, new instruments come in. There's a lot of different ways of playing it. So it is quite a dynamic tradition, and I think it's not stuck in time. So you're part of something that's also organic.
Mick, Andrew mentioned crack, which is an Irish word for, and I don't know if this fully encapsulates it, but, a fun or a good time. I've heard many people in the Irish music scene here in St. Louis refer to it, for maybe lack of a better term, a vibe. Like there's this just feeling that you get when you're playing with one another. What do you think of St. Louis's? Is there? Forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, but is there good crack in St. Louis?
Well, actually, there is, yeah. And again, like we'd know a lot of the musicians and a lot of the teachers that are at the Tionól for many years, So, and it's great to meet them. Andrew might meet them a little bit more often. And now I know America is a big country, and when you meet someone new, it's great. You get to know them, and they become part of the crack. But particularly when you meet characters that you know for years, like Pat Brothers or Marty Fahey or Sean Ryan or Mike Mullins and the Pipers. Like, it's just great to meet them and have fun or crack, whatever you want to call it. And you're talking about times where you met before at different Tionóls or back home in Ireland at Milltown Malbay. Like, all these stories come up again, and then particularly about some of the older musicians and the stories that they would have had, and funny occasions, and even different tunes that would come up. Oh, did you hear this tune? Or, oh no, I heard that. I heard a recording of someone playing that tune, and someone else gave me a recording of this, and it's different. Oh yeah, it's so it's such a vibrant community, and you actually come back home and you're thinking, wow, that was a great weekend, or it was a great couple of days, or whatever, because you've met lovely characters, interesting people, sat down, and it's lovely to sit down with 5 or 6 people and you could play music for 4 or 5 hours. People don't always really understand that. You have to be in the moment. As a musician sitting in among that, you think, wow, this is great. Have a bit of fun, bit of crack, tell stories and play a few tunes. You couldn't beat it, to be honest.
And I think unique to this probably is the Tionól has its own kind of character to it. Primarily driven by Mike Mullins. It's a very welcoming Tionól. There's a lot of effort put in. Like we talked about, we host something on a Saturday and Mike does stuff, and then there's McGurk's session on Sunday, which is very informal, where people are gathering, less structured than lessons. So I think that St. Louis Tionól has a uniquely good vibe to it. That means there's good crack.
I agree.
Andrew, you've been in St. Louis for several decades now. Is there a traditional Irish tune that really reminds you of home?
Yeah, there's always some, but and this kind of goes back to Mick's first solo recording. He called it the May Morning Dew, and it's just a song. So my dad, while he played, he also liked to sing, and he had like his standard songs he would sing, like O'Sullivan's John, the Rocks of Bon, but probably his favorite was the song called the May Morning Dew.
Mick, does that song bring up anything for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's a huge, like, and kind of every time you listen, you think of Dad singing it,
So actually, because I saw there's an internet, because like the airs we talk about, some of the airs are quite complicated and really strong and maybe beautiful. The May Morning Dew is a very short air, so it's probably not a complicated melody. I thought some comment like his first album was called The May Morning Dew. He plays it on it, and I think it was like, why would Mick be playing that tune? It's like he plays that tune for this very simple, this whole tradition, how we relate to it, where we got it, and what it means to us.
That was St. Louis resident Andrew O'Brien and uilleann piper Mick O'Brien, remembering their father, Dinny O'Brien, a well-known Irish musician. Mick's recording of his dad's favorite song, May Morning Dew, is from Mick's 1996 solo album. I spoke with them in March. We need to take a short break. We'll continue our exploration of St. Louis's Irish music scene and the upcoming Irish Arts and Culture Festival, the St. Louis Tionól, when we come back. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
Support comes from Gemma, architects, planners, and designers seeking to bring joy to their clients and communities. Details at gemastl.com.
Welcome back. I'm Emily Woodbury in for Elaine Shaw. This hour, we're diving into St. Louis's rich Irish music scene ahead of the St. Louis Tionól. Tionól is an Irish word for gathering with intent to share, and that well describes the events happening this weekend. The St. Louis Tionól is a 4-day festival filled with live music and dancing in various spots around town, as well as stage performances from some of the top players in Irish traditional music. There's also a day of workshops on Saturday for those interested in learning more about Irish music and culture. It begins this Thursday evening and runs throughout the weekend. As someone who is very new to playing Irish fiddle, I will be there. I'll be jumping into some informal sessions with the tunes that I know how to play, and I'm really looking forward to learning more from the professionals at the Saturday workshops. One such professional is Liz Knowles of Portland, Maine.
I'm an Irish fiddle player. I am a former classical violinist that turned to the dark side, or the light side, as I say it. Been playing Irish music for 35 years.
Liz's husband, Kieran O'Hare, is also an accomplished musician, playing the Irish bagpipes, known as uilleann pipes. They're part of the trio Open the Door for Three, and this song you're hearing is off the group's 2024 album. Liz and Kieran travel all over the country and world for Irish festivals. Liz says the St. Louis Tionól is particularly special.
It really parallels events that we've been to in Ireland. And it's due to some people like Emer Arkins and Mike Mullins and so many others. There's just kind of a density of great musicians that live in that town. But there's also been a density of people that are actively trying to support Irish culture and Irish music in that way, and really trying to keep it connected to Ireland. And, you know, to me, this is the most wonderful and beautiful expression of being American. And so St. Louis ends up being just kind of, you know, if we had to kind of say our favorite places in the country to go play Irish music, St. Louis it's just up there. And it feels like it's a living, breathing culture there, where I think in some places in the country, some of that has gone away, and St. Louis just seems to keep the fire burning. And it's just it's great. A lot of us make a trek there just to be a part of that.
That's fiddle player Liz Knowles talking about the St. Louis Tionól. And joining me now is the Mike Mullins that Liz mentioned and gave kudos to. Mike, welcome back to St. Louis on the Air.
Thanks very much.
Also joining us is one of the top Irish harpists in the world. We are lucky to have her here in St. Louis. She's also the director of St. Louis Irish Arts. Eileen Gannon, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mike, you co-founded the St. Louis Tionól in the late 90s. What was your intent at the time?
I was looking for some way to do something over a weekend period that would allow people interested in the music to get together and maybe have some teachers come in and just have a weekend of learning in tunes and try to make something happen here. At that time, there was virtually nothing else going on except on the West Coast and the East Coast. There was nothing here in the middle, and it was time we did something.
By the time the first St. Louis Tionól was hosted in 1998, efforts were well underway to build up St. Louis as a hub for Irish arts. And that's in large part to the organization, Eileen, that was founded in the 1970s by your parents. That's Patrick, P.J. Gannon, and Helen Gannon. As I understand, they immigrated from Ireland in the 60s and wanted to bring Irish culture with them and foster it here.
That's right. They moved here in 1967. My dad was a psychiatrist, and he got a one-year internship at the State Psychiatric Hospital on the Hill. And they didn't think they were going to stick around, and they never did move home, and had me and my brothers here, and were quite conscious of the fact that we might not really feel very Irish, having grown up in the United States. So they just started a very small gathering in our basement of teaching people how to play the tin whistle mostly, and some fiddle players. And then they started inviting guests from Ireland who were coming through town, and it just sort of grew and grew and grew over the last 50 years, and now we've got a largest Irish music school in the country.
So what was that like for you growing up in such a musical family, and then you had all these other people coming in to learn music, dance, and culture?
Well, it was wonderful. There was never a dull moment. We always had music in the house. There was always a visitor over, and they would always teach me a tune, and that's how I would kind of categorize them in my mind, by who taught them to me.
How would you describe your own musical journey?
So I was given a fiddle. A fiddle was put into my hand when I was age 3, and I took lessons, Suzuki lessons, until I was 7, when a local harp teacher, Laura Hearn, she required people to be 7 before she would teach them. And she took me on as a student, and she said, if you want to play the harp, you will have to give up the fiddle. Because there's
Really?
only time
Why?
there's only time for one instrument in her mind. She wanted
Okay.
all of my practice time. And she was right, because it takes a lot of practice.
So my grandson started at the age of 4, I think, on the fiddle, and went straight away to Helen's St. Louis Irish Arts School at the time, and had no time for the whistle whatsoever. He's now living in Scotland playing with the Scottish National Youth Orchestra, and he was asked recently whether he likes classical or traditional music the best, and he said, without missing a beat, traditional because it's fun.
Nice.
I can relate to that. I have already given guff to my own journey with classical music on today's show. There's a time and a place, but Irish traditional music is quite fun. Your shoulders do drop a little bit. You can kind of relax.
You can relax.
So you're bringing in a lot of musicians from overseas. I hear this might be the most that you've ever brought in.
6 of them.
With so much uncertainty and fear surrounding U.S. foreign policy and immigration policy right now, we're hearing some visa holders are reporting disruptions and even detainment trying to enter the country. Some people are planning to travel to the U.S. have canceled or postponed their plans. What would you say, and I'd love to hear both your thoughts on this, what's the significance at this moment in time in inviting folks to St. Louis, Missouri from another country, in this case, Ireland, as many in the U.S. seek to promote more isolationism? What is the role of these types of festivals at this moment in time?
From my perspective, it's vital to keep that door open and to keep that cultural interaction going. Something like 33 million Americans trace Irish heritage somewhere in their background. And so there's a huge interest, if you dig a little bit with people, in Irish culture and in Ireland. And so many people have been over there and loved the country. And so to hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be able to continue bringing Irish musicians in to share that culture and the music going forward.
Eileen, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think St. Louis would be a very bleak place if it weren't for all the immigrants that helped to shape it. And I think that's probably true of most U.S. cities. I absolutely love everything that immigrants have done for St. Louis, including my parents.
We're talking about St. Louis's Irish music scene in the upcoming St. Louis Tionól with Eileen Gannon and Mike Mullins. We need to take a short break, but we will be back in just a moment to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back. I'm Emily Woodbury. St. Louis is home to a rich Irish music scene, and we're talking about it with Eileen Gannon, a harpist and director of St. Louis Irish Arts. Also with us is Mike Mullins, the co-founder of St. Louis Tionól, an Irish music and culture festival that runs this Thursday through Sunday. I attended last year's Tionól workshops, and while I learned techniques to play the fiddle better, I also learned a lot about Irish music culture, the etiquette, the history, the way that certain regions in Ireland and here in the U.S. have signature styles of playing, almost like accents of a language. I'd like to share one more reflection from fiddle player Liz Knowles about why talking about culture and history is an important part of Irish music.
There's a humor, there's an etiquette that goes with when you sit down with somebody to play a tune. There's usually, in so many cases, there's a story behind where the person learned their music and where that tune came from and the playing of that tune. You know, there's any number of ways to play a tune, and those are handed down literally from hand to hand through players that play it different ways. So we care a lot about, again, all of those human aspects around the music.
That's fiddle player Liz Knowles, who will be teaching and performing at this weekend's St. Louis Tionól. Eileen, we've been hearing from a lot of people about how Irish music is about much more than the techniques you use with your instrument. What are some of the main cultural tenets of St. Louis Irish Arts?
We try to offer them sort of a well-rounded education in all things Irish. So, of course, the music is a very big part of it and the main reason why people come to us. We also do dancing, which really informs the rhythm behind the music. So those are inextricably linked. We teach them Irish language because that is also very linked to the music. If you don't really understand how the Irish language works, it's hard to understand how the music works. And my mom teaches sometimes baking classes and embroidery, and everything is sort of connected in Irish culture.
Yeah. I think it's important to realize, too, that Irish Arts covers not just step dancing, although that's a major feature, and that's what most people think of when they think of Irish dancing. But there are set dances, which are very much more social and very important over in Ireland, as well as sean-nós dancing, which is an old-style dancing akin to sort of clogging, I suppose is maybe the word I'm looking for. But those are very much more common over in Ireland than they are in this country. But they're just part of the scene, and it's not the end-all and be-all of what we're trying to do in the sessions and in things like the Tionól and even St. Louis Irish Arts.
And this Thursday night, as part of the St. Louis Tionól, there will be music and dancing. This is going to be at Atomic on Manchester in the Grove.
Right.
What can folks expect? Is this kind of an open, you can come and learn how to do these dances? What is it going to be like?
So somebody will be calling the dance, and this is what we would call a ceilidh. So it is a social dance. I don't think they'll be doing any sets. They might be. Maybe. Perhaps. But they'll be doing things like a Virginia Reel, social dances that involve everybody. And you don't have to know how to do it. They'll be taught on the spot.
And these are kind of upbeat, faster paced.
Very upbeat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, bring your water bottle.
Yes.
So, Eileen, St. Louis Irish Arts has grown so much since its conception in the 1970s. And I've heard that so many people owe their talent, interest, everything in Irish culture and music to St. Louis Irish Arts. And you still have a lot of new generations, kids today, learning music and dance there. Where do you hope to take it in the future?
Well, I do hope we continue to grow. We just moved into a much larger building, so we are growing into that currently. And we are mostly staffed by alumni. And I guess my goal is to get the next generation of alumni folded into the teaching staff as we increase our needs for more teachers.
And do you think a lot of your students will be at the St. Louis Tionól this weekend?
That is the idea.
And Mike, briefly, we've talked about some of the things happening with the Tionól. What are some of the other events throughout the weekend?
Well, we have the concert in Maplewood at Focal Point on Friday night. And then we have the workshops on Saturday, the concert at the Sheldon on Saturday evening, and then there'll be sessions at O'Connell's after that, and sessions on Sunday at McGurk's. And I should say there'll be sessions after the concert on Friday there at Focal Point as well.
So for folks attending the Tionól this weekend, listening to sessions throughout town the rest of the year, or just listening to Irish music in general, I'd love to give all of us a better sense of, what we're hearing. Because someone I play with, Nick Brown, he told me once that, when you don't know Irish music, all the songs sound the same. And then you start to learn more and more of them, and you're like, wow, these are all different. And then you really get to know them, and then you come back around and say, okay, they're all kind of the same. There's elements here. But there are very specific types of Irish tunes that are played. As I've been learning to play Irish fiddle this past year, I'm playing a lot of jigs and reels. So let's break some of these down. Eileen, what is a jig?
So a jig is a type of dance, and the music is written in 6/8. And
what does that mean, 6/8?
6/8 means 6/8 notes in a bar. And the way Irish people discern it is they see if they can say the words rashers and sausages along with it.
Rashers and sausages.
Rashers and sausages. So that kind of gives you the pulse as well of that 6/8.
Okay, let's take a listen to a jig. This is one that Mike recorded in our studio in 2023. That's Garrett Berry's Jig, performed by Mike Mullins and Nick Brown here in the St. Louis Public Radio studio in 2023.
The important thing about a lot of this music, and particularly jigs and hornpipes, is that you'll notice that even though it was a 6/8 and 6/8 notes, they don't have equal weight, if you will. They don't have equal time. And this is what makes it so difficult to learn Irish music from a piece of paper. You really have to learn it by ear, and because you lose that timing difference. So the middle note of each of those groups of three is a little bit shorter than the last note. So you get a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's true of all of these different types of dances that we play music for.
Okay, so how about a reel? What are we looking out for here?
So with a reel, that's the most common tune type. There's millions of them, and they are written in 4/4, and the mnemonic device for that one is black and yellow. So you say black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
Black and yellow. Well, to demonstrate this, Eileen, let's play a track off your 2017 album, The Glory Days Are Over. This is the Patty Mills reel. So are reels also a dance tune?
Yes. Yes, almost everything is a dance tune unless it's an air or a slow air.
Okay, so look out for reels in 4/4, jigs in 6/8, and, listen to the emphasis on those beats.
Listen to the beats, yes.
It's all about the groove.
And the crack.
And the crack.
Eileen Gannon is a harpist and director of St. Louis Irish Arts. Eileen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And Mike Mullins is the co-founder of the St. Louis Tionól. This is happening this Thursday through Sunday. You can find out more information at tionól.org. And this is an Irish word, so we need to spell that out for you. It's TIONOL.org. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And to play us out of today's show, let's hear an original composition of Emer Arkins. Emer's an Irish musician and singer who lives in St. Louis. Here's She's At It Again, a song composed in honor of Eileen's mom, Helen Gannon, who's been a leader in St. Louis Irish arts for decades.
Today's episode was produced, mixed, and edited by Emily Woodbury. Audio engineering by Emily Woodbury and Aaron Dorr.
Podcast design by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.